Hello chums, welcome to Fieros Reborn with me, Fieros Reborn. Hello, welcome to the channel, which has the same name as me. I've got some difficult feelings going on inside me at the moment, like heartburn. Oh, it's been going on all day. I think it might have been because I've just been drinking too much orange juice. I've got too much acid in my stomach, and it just feels a bit painy every now and again. Anyway, hello, welcome here. We're going to do Fieros Story Time. I feel like we're starting to come to the end of Fieros Story Time now. Coming to the end of the year, coming to the end of this series. So, boo-hoo maybe, or way hey for finally fucking finishing it. So I'm going to do a summary and see how far I get. I have a feeling that I have less stuff to talk about than I thought I did, because doing these videos and repeating the same story over and over and over again has just made me feel like I don't need to say it anymore. I've said it enough times. I'm done with it, parts of it anyway, and it's time to just let it go. Let the past be the past. Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Yeah! I mean, that's an outcome, eh? I think maybe part of me wanted to do this so that I didn't forget what happened, so that at least I could have a memory of it that was clear for me. Because one of the issues I had with this whole story is not feeling clear on what even happened and in what order. So having gone through it so many times and been able to put it together, I feel like that part of me is satisfied to some degree that yes, I know what happened now, and I know what in what order it happened, and I know it from my perspective rather than the perspective that was told to me. So mission accomplished in some ways. I haven't finished the whole story though, so there's still stuff to talk about. But there feels like there's less of the urge to tell the story now, if that makes sense. So before it was like I needed to say it, and I needed to say it over and over again, and I needed to make sense of it. And now it's kind of like, okay, said it now. Got millions of videos to prove that I said it, and I can always watch them back to remind myself of my past if I want to indulge in that. Because some parts were good, and I like the overall story of it. I like the telling of the story, and I like hearing the story of it. So there we are. So let's carry on and let's crack on at the same time. So let's carry on. And let's not drink, that's hot at the moment. Too hot. Too hot. Too hot. The fireman is too hot. Let's stop now. Right. So summary. The story begins in 2004 because that was important to me at that time. Now I don't really care so much. I had a girlfriend called Andrea. We broke up because she was a dick and she cheated on me. Let her get on with it, whatever. Bye. Okay. I had a slight self-esteem issue around my grades from A levels because I wanted to get A, but I got A, B, and that little B made me feel unhappy with myself, which is still strange how such a small, it's only a letter, it's a letter on a piece of paper, and that has the control, or had the control, over my feeling about myself on the inside. Okay, yeah, but that was the case, so there we go. Let's leave the case behind. Bye-bye, case. AAB, very good, fine. Still pretty good score, to be fair, comparatively speaking, relatively speaking. Okay, then I was working at Legoland in 2004. The season came to an end. We had the fireworks night stuff, which goes on for about a week, and we had some kind of fancy dress ball thing around Halloween, but I think it was after the actual date of Halloween. I just have a feeling that it wasn't on the actual Halloween, it was like the week after or something. It was around Guy Fawkes Day. I remember the name of the play that I was in at school. It was called November the 5th, not Guy Fawkes Day, it was called November the 5th. That was the name of the play that I starred in, where I was Guy Fawkes. I played Guy Fawkes, and I had to do this bit at the beginning and at the end of every show where I made the sounds as though I was being disemboweled and hung, drawn and quartered, all that stuff. So I had to make all these gut-wrenching, horrible sounds at the beginning. And when I was doing that, I mean, it was written in the script, it was part of the thing, it was like to set the scene, because you know, Guy Fawkes does get hung, drawn, and quartered at the end of the Guy Fawkes story, when they get found out and caught and everything. I think someone snitched him out. Yeah. Anyway, so I had to make those sounds, and while I was doing it, I realised how gruesome that whole thing is. That whole hanging, drawing, and quartering. Because I was actually imagining it happening to me while I was making these horrible sounds. And I had to do it at the beginning to set the scene for the play, and then at the end to sort of round it off. But yeah, it's pretty gruesome what we used to do to each other, and still what we do to each other as human beings in this world, on this planet. It's gross, the things that torture and war and just fighting. And I mean, I went to Windsor Castle recently as well, because it's near where I live, and I'd not actually been there for ages and ages, like since I was about 10 years old, I think. And when I went there, there was these knights, you know, the knights costumes, the metal armor for knights. Just like, so they had a kind of dummy underneath them, and they were just standing there. The one was sitting on a horse, one was just standing there, and they had just lots of those suits of armor all around on the walls. And I was thinking, God bloody hell, they must have been fearing for their lives all the time, these people. You know, it must have been pretty gruesome. Can you imagine being killed by sword? Oh God, it's just grim, isn't it? It's horrible. It's painful, bloody. Oh, I don't even know. Words don't describe how hellish the last 500 years even have been. And then you think about, I keep occasionally reading about concentration camps and Auschwitz and things like that in World War II, and the things we did to each other as human beings. You know, the Nazis were human beings, so you know, although we like to think of them as monsters, they were human beings. So they shared the same physiology as we do. They weren't a different race or species, even though they might have thought they were a superior race. But no. So this is what us human beings do to each other. It's pretty horrible. It's horrendous, and it makes me quite sick thinking about it. So all the more reason for us to become more peaceful towards each other and to bring about world peace. Yeah. That seems pretty weak. World peace for everybody. Let's lay down our swords and turn them into plowshares, and let the lion get shagging the lamb, and we can all have a much happier place. Yeah. Anyway, so I finished school. I was working at Legoland over the summer. Played about with remote control cars. That was part of my job. Had to flatten a load of cardboard boxes quite often. That was part of my job as well. Had to go around picking up boxes that kids had thrown on the floor, and swords, Lego, not actual made of Lego, but Lego branded swords. Yeah, had to pick them off the floor, tidy them up in a shop that I used to work at. I told you about the fact that I met Angelina Jolie because she came into the shop, the sweet shop where I was working at one point. Andrea was also working at Legoland because I introduced her to the place by this recommend a friend thing, and I think I got 50 quid put in my bank account because of that, which is cool. And but we weren't allowed to work together because there was a company rule that says you're not allowed to work with each other. There was this other guy as well who I spent a bit of time with in close proximity to, which I think, if I look back at it, is where my first real curiosity about men came into play. I think he was slightly older than me, but he was taller. He was an attractive person. He was an attractive man. Good sense of humour. He was South African as well, so he was like Andrea. Andrea was South African and good sense of humour and intelligent, and this man was South African, good sense of humour and intelligent. So I feel like we were flirting, even though I didn't really realise that's what it was. But if I look back at it, we were pretty much flirting. And we spent some time in this, sounds so dodgy, in this stock cupboard together. But nothing happened sexual or anything. But we were just told to go into the stock cupboard and arrange boxes and stuff because someone had created a mess in there. Now, for all I know, it could have been the guy himself who had made the mess, because he was actually from the warehouse department. He was just being sent up to our shop area occasionally for a few days a week to help out with warehouse type of merchandising, stocking, whatever, stocking, sorry, not merchandising, stocking. Anyway, so we had this a couple of days, I think, where we had to do some arranging of boxes in this pretty small, it wasn't that small, it was bigger than this room, but it was quite small, and it was like no windows, and it was just quite oppressive in there, and just felt like we were in quite close proximity to each other. And I feel like that was when I started becoming interested in what might be in his pants, because I feel like he had a big willy. I never saw it, but I feel like he did. So I think that was where my curiosity around my sexuality really began, because before that it was only really teasing, and it was more a fear of sexuality and a fear of manifesting gayness. But I never had actual curiosity apart from wanting to know a kind of like, how big is my penis in regards to other people's. It's really more a case of that, like wanting to compare. Yeah, but then again, maybe it was just because I was actually attracted to penises and I wanted to see what they look like. Could have been. But I'm not going to judge myself about that. Anyway, so yeah, there might have been some curiosity developing in that stock cupboard there. But yeah, so the season finished. I went off to Florida. Just before the season finished, sorry, I went off to Florida for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks alone, my friend. I wrote the song. And Andrea was starting university in UCL at that point. She didn't take a gap year, she just started straight away. And then she cheated on me behind my back while I was away. And when I came back, I met up with her and found out, because I grilled her on it. I asked her what had been going on and managed to get out of her eventually that she had slept with this guy in terms of having sex with him. I think she was just trying to get away with revealing as little as possible. She said she'd slept in the same bed as him to begin with, and I pushed her further. And yeah, she had slept with him. Anyway, so that was pretty fucking shit. Okay, so that was the end of that. I wrote a song about it, blah blah blah. Recorded that song about it later as well, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Okay. Around the same time that Andrew and I broke up, Steph, the co-leader of my band, Silent Dawn, she left the band to pursue personal music projects. I believe she was doing a solo artist. She was thinking about doing covers, and also she was in this other band called 53rd Way, I think. Yeah, 53rd Way. Which was a name based upon there were 52. There's some book of like 52 ways to commit suicide, and the band was called 53rd Way, something like that, or 52 ways to die or something. And then this was the 53rd Way. Anyway, their music was quite cool. I remember one of the songs was something in a drama queen. Me. It was quite punky, but yeah, it was good. It's a shame we couldn't do stuff like that with her, but whatever, that was the case. So then we were having trouble with the drummer, Chris, because he was doing his A-levels, and we were 2 years older than him, Jim and I, the bassist. Jim the bassist, and I, not Jim and I. It sounds like Jiminy Cricket. No, not Jiminy Cricket. So yeah, so we were looking for someone else, or I was looking for someone else on Gumtree, which I remember now. Yesterday, Gumtree was around in that time. It was, yeah, I think so. Gumtree must have been Gumtree or Craigslist, but I think it was Gumtree. Good old Gumtree. Looking for musicians. There were other sites as well, like I can't remember, but yeah, there were other sites. So we looked on that. I looked on that, found some drummers, and then we auditioned them at the studio that we normally rehearsed at with the rest of the band. But no one was clicking, and the only person who might have worked lived too far away, and it was going to be impractical and unfeasible. Is it unfeasible or infeasible? It wasn't going to be easy to make the band work with this new person, so we just went back to the drawing board. But by that point, Jim was so exhausted from this whole process and had lost so much faith in the whole thing since Steph had left. Now Chris, another original member, was having difficulty in showing up. Jim just decided to bail. At that point, I made a firm decision to go to uni. I had already applied to different universities. I think I definitely did apply to lots of different universities, and I definitely did go to an open day at Reading University and an interview day. Maybe they were on the same day, I'm not sure. But an interview day for my art, to show them my portfolio of work. I remember going there and showing them the stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, cool." And I was a bit concerned as to whether they would even like the stuff, but they seemed okay with it, and I got the offer. So yeah. That was good. And so, yeah, as I said, I was at my friend Sam's house when Jim gave me a call, or I gave Jim a call, saying, he said basically, I can't do it anymore. And I went, okay, fine. And then put the phone down on him. And that was the end of Silent Dawn. Boop! You know, the line has been disconnected. The Silent Dawn line is disconnected. Boop. So that was the end of that. I did go through periods of trying to get the band back together afterwards, but it just never happened. However, Chris, the drummer, did feature as the main drummer on the album that I recorded. Called Yet to Be Named, but it's subsequently been retitled and rebranded as a Wilson album, and it's called Wilson Consumed in Self. So the album is called Consumed in Self by the band Wilson, and you can find that on Amazon, iTunes, Deezer, Spotify, and you can also get it direct from the distribution company called cdbaby.com. So if you want to look that up and see what I sound like in a musical way, then you can look up Consumed in Self by the band Wilson. There we go. So, let's have a think what's happening next in the story. So, band had fallen apart. Right. While I was already working at Outback. So the band story, I feel like the band has its own kind of narrative to it. You know, the band is something that is almost separate from everything else because I'm like in a different zone. The band is a separate item than work, for example. I mean, the band crosses over into work occasionally. For example, when I was working at Legoland, I would write down lyrics on the little pieces of till paper. When I was bored and there wasn't many customers, I would just like write down my lyrics to remember for the gig that night, or just to remember them for myself, because I was pretty bad at remembering lyrics. I'm much better now, but I went through a period more recently, in fact, where I couldn't remember my lyrics at all, and I kept freezing on stage. One particular time when I was doing an open mic night gig, and I just stopped and I couldn't carry on, and I decided that I was just going to get off stage because I'd forgotten my lyrics. It was really embarrassing, and I kind of did that on purpose. In fact, I did do that on purpose because normally I would have gone up with lyric sheets at that stage of my life. There are times where I wouldn't go up with lyric sheets, but that particular time I was going up with lyric sheets because I was worried about my lyrics, dropping them. And then I decided, no, I'm not going to go up with lyric sheets. I'm going to put myself in a really dodgy position to either succeed or fail. And if I fail, I'll have to face that feeling because I feel like I'm trying to avoid this feeling of forgetting my lyrics. So I put myself in that kind of no way out situation. I did fuck up and then felt horrendous shame and embarrassment and blockage, and just got back off the stage and said, I can't go on, can't do it, I've forgotten it, can't go on, bottled it. And that I designed that experience to make me to give myself a motivation to actually learn my lyrics properly, because I was always trying to wing it basically and not actually spend the time to remember my lyrics properly. Anyway, that's another story for another time in another place. A whole new world. Okay, so where was I? Yeah. So the band was its like own narrative. Really, it happened alongside things, and it was like its own entity because it was its own collective entity that we were working on. And I'm just remembering other band memories now, like playing um, the Magnet Leisure Centre in Maidenhead. We played some gigs there. Those were good gigs, and there were some nice ladies there. When I say ladies, we were teenagers, so we were all teenagers. All of us in the whole world were teenagers. But it was good, man. It was a nice feeling being a teenager and being a band person. Felt like I belonged, felt like I had a place. And all these people coming along to see me, not necessarily me specifically, but the band and the other bands as well. But so yeah, it made me feel important. It made me feel good. It made me feel like this is where I want to be and I'm doing the right thing. So that would be a nice feeling to get back to, because for the last few years of my life, I don't feel like I know where I am. I don't feel like I am where I'm supposed to be. I don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like I'm doing stuff that I have to do that's second best because I cannot motivate myself or cannot find the thing that I am supposed to do. So yeah, whatever. This is a sad story overall, isn't it? Well, so when the band ended, I decided to go to university, but I was already working at this place called the Outback Steakhouse in Staines, and I was already starting to go out with this guy called Charlie. I went on a holiday, decided to become a Buddhist, stopped eating meat slowly over a period of time, practiced meditation, practiced hypnosis. Before I got with Charlie, I was trying to get with this girl called M, but that wasn't going anywhere because her friends basically didn't like me and I was being manipulative and a bit of a twat, so they kicked me out of their friend group. Oh, God. It's just one terrible piece of shit after another, isn't it? So Andrew and I breaking up, the band breaking up, job ending at Legoland, then uh, then nothing working with Emily, then me getting kicked out of their friend group, then me going out with Charlie, who was someone who I didn't really want to be going out with just because I was desperate and curious about my sexuality, but ended up getting into what is still the worst relationship of my whole life. So let's talk about that again. So, why was Charlie a terrible relationship for me? Because I didn't want to do the sex. He wanted to do the sex. I did not want to do the sex. We were always arguing. Always arguing. Even in our general conversation, it was always had the tone of an argument. It didn't have a tone of being on the same page. It had a tone of being on two separate pages, not working towards common goals, but attacking from two different vantage points. Only very occasionally did we feel like we were on that same page together, moving towards something together, or being something together. But most of the time, it was like he was from his whack point of view, and I was from my whack point of view. I thought that he was ridiculously self-absorbed and self-invested and selfish in terms of his worldview, conservative, only thinking for him, me and mine, that type of thing. Very xenophobic, racist kind of as well, and very, what do you call it, nationalism oriented, local community oriented, and not thinking of the bigger picture of us as a planet or as a species or as sentient beings in general. So his view was very limited. It was very much to do with him and his family and the sense of being threatened, I think, was constantly there, constantly feeling that his views were being threatened and his interests were being threatened. That kind of very selfish mindset. And I was completely the opposite, maybe even more opposite of him because of the contrast. So I went even more selflessness orientation towards charity and towards giving and towards otherness, as in other people were more important than myself. And I think that was in contrast, or maybe I even went further that way because of the contrast with Charlie's self-absorbed, self-interested, very much me-focused, as in not my me, his me, very much him-focused view of the world. And I think that drove me even more into wanting to be expansive and all embracing of all different cultures and different people, and have compassion for all people and the whole planet, and to be see myself as a global citizen. That's what I was looking at anyway. Now I kind of don't see it in those terms anymore. I mean, those environmental and global issues still are important, but I feel they're less important to me. I feel like I feel like the world is so insane that it's almost not even worth talking about the things that happen in the world, because you could just blanket label everything that happens in the world as just being mass insanity for most of the stuff that happens, and most of the things that people say as well on TV is all invested with a sense of importance and meaning that 3 weeks down the line is completely meaningless and importless, has no import. So it's just, and hardly anyone has a sense of humour in themselves these days either, especially on the TV and in the newspapers and on the media and things. So just the whole world is mad, basically, is all I can say. I think that's probably the most accurate thing I can say, because that's like top level. Okay, so the whole world is basically insane, and then you filter down that, and you've got different types of insanity, like the fact that poverty exists, and such a massive disparity between the world's richest and the world's poorest in terms of resources and economic capital, whatever. So there's that, and then all the like wars and stuff. That's another aspect of the insanity of the world. Arguments, even just like arguments in your own home, arguments and differences focused upon more between people. That's a form of insanity, I think. Whatever. So I've just gone, you know what, I can't solve the world's problems, and I'm not even going to try. So I'm going to do what I can to make the world a better place from where I am, by being myself and by spreading some form of positivity if and when I can. Otherwise, if I can't, then I'll just be myself and take care of myself. So I've kind of reverted into a Charlie kind of mode in a way. Self-interested. Focus on making myself happy and spreading that outwards through the work that I do. Okay. So Charlie and I were at very different political poles, and just general worldview was completely opposite. So that did not make for a very easy relationship, because everything I wanted to do, he wanted to do the opposite of that. And I was always trying to bring his sense of self to a more expansive place where he didn't care so much about how he looked, and so that he cared more about what was good for others, mainly, actually. And he was always trying to say that, no, we're important, I'm important, and why should other people get more than us, or why should other people even be factored into this equation? For example, like on trains and stuff, I always would give up my seat for other people, because I was like, I can stand up, it's fine. And I was very self-sacrificing in that way, and I thought it was very important at that time for me to do that. Whereas now I'm like, what, you got issue? Have you got some kind of problem? Like, have you got some kind of disability? You know, is it hard for you to stand? Fine, you can sit down. Are you really old? Do you look like you're knackered? Yes, you can sit down. But if you're just any old chump, this is my chair, get out. What are you trying to do? No, you're not sitting down. Stand up like I would have to if you were in my chair when I got here. You know, that's very fucking selfish. But you know, I do give up my chair when I feel like it's appropriate and when I can see that the other person genuinely needs it more than me. But I'm not going to get up. Just it's too much effort. Honestly, I'm fucking lazy. Like if I have, even the fact of thinking about whether or not I should get up is effort. So I'd rather just be there like this on the train. And even if, and like if someone comes onto the train and I'm having to make those calculations, do they or do they not need it? That's effort. I'd rather just either get up straight away or just blank it out of my awareness. So anyway, yeah, but he was very much of the selfish mode and I was very much of the other oriented, selfless or trying to be selfless mode. So we did not get along. But as I've said over and 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 over again, I felt trapped in the relationship. So as much as I didn't want to be there, as hard as it was, I also didn't even really notice how bad it was because there was such this compulsion to keep it going, even though it was a suffering relationship, that I kind of got used to being in this shitty relationship until I started to wake up from it and go, oh, fuck, you know, I don't need to do this anymore. And I was starting to have conversations with other people that were giving me input about my relationship and helping me to see it from different perspectives. And I was starting to realise my own feelings more. This was while I was at uni at Reading. Having these conversations with other people outside of the relationship to get other people's views. So I remember having conversations with one particular guy about an argument that Charlie and I had, which was about I wanted to basically be a martyr, and I was having this big self-absorbed moment about if it ever came to it in the future and I had to lay down my life, or a nuclear weapon was going to be launched, then I would lay down my life. And Charlie was like, no, you shouldn't do it. No, no, no. And I was like, oh, I want to do it. You can't stop me. And he was like, no, I won't let you. And so we had this stupid argument over a hypothetical reality that has virtually dick percentage of ever happening. Yet we were arguing over it. So we were arguing over an imaginary situation that I'd come up with to prove that I could be a martyr if I wanted to be, to prove that I could be a kind of Joan of Arc, Gandhi, Jesus type of figure, to die for the sins of others somehow, to die for the greater good, right? I really wanted to be able to say I will die for my beliefs, because I thought it was very important to have that kind of moral character, to say that you would die for your beliefs, and it gave me a very real sense of self-importance to have that. I would die for my environmentalism beliefs, right? It's just the kind of muppet that I was. And Charlie was arguing with me about that, and like same sort of thing, like he argued with me when I wanted to donate my organs, which feels gross now, but at the time I was like, yeah, I want people to have my organs because if I die, I want someone to be able to benefit from that. And Charlie was going, no, you shouldn't do that because they're yours, and you know that's weird. And he didn't have a logical answer. He just kind of had a feeling-based answer, which is fine, but I didn't think it was fine at the time because I was like, I want to give him my blah blah, it's my body, blah blah blah. And he was saying like, oh, but what about your family? And yeah, we had these stupid arguments all the time about hypothetical situations in the future that never would actually happen, that had actually nothing to do with him either, that he always had this kind of view as though he owned me and as though he had a right to tell me what I could and couldn't do with myself, my life, my thoughts, my future, and my body. and so on. So that was quite a strong point. Yeah. So we were always having these arguments, and I remember speaking to this one particular guy. His name was Jamie. He was he was a mate of mine from this informal little group of philosophy students who occasionally would gather around in one of the cafes and chat shit about philosophy, which was good fun, by the way. Yeah, his name was Jamie, and I spoke to him about this argument about me wanting to be a martyr. This argument I'd had with Charlie, right? And I told him, and I said, look, I've had this argument with my boyfriend about this stupid fucking martyr thing, and I wanted to say that I would put down my life for my beliefs if I wanted to, and he wouldn't. He sort of wouldn't let me have that. And Jamie said something along the lines of, "Well, it's your life and your decision, so if that's what you would want to do in that situation, then that's what you want to do." And he just made it quite clear somehow to me that it wasn't even really an issue of whether Charlie was right or wrong, or whether I was right or wrong. It was more of a case of I was the one who was in charge of my own decisions. And that conversation, I went away from that conversation feeling like, yeah, it is my belief, and it does exist here. You know, it's got nothing to do with Charlie really, what I decide in my hypothetical situations. So bollocks to him. And that was one of those moments where I was like, the attachment to Charlie, and I always thought that he was the one attached to me, but I hadn't ever left him either. So, you know, I was equally attached or enmeshed to him, with him. So that conversation with Jamie, where he kind of just somehow made it clear to me that I'm in control of my own body and my own life, and that I make the decisions on my life. And I was like, oh yeah, like fuck, obviously, and damn it, yeah, you're right, and okay. So something of that conversation went in, and I there were other conversations as well along those lines. Like I had another conversation with a girl called Sarah, who later on I had a sexual interaction with, which didn't fully come to fruition, shall we say, because she got insecure about her body because she was in a wheelchair. Finally said that one. So she had insecurity issues. But yeah, we were friends before we did anything sexual. And I didn't even really admit to myself that I found her attractive, but I did find her attractive. I found her attractive as a person and also attractive physically. The wheelchair thing didn't bother me at all, actually, but it bothered her from her own feeling about herself. So she didn't feel attractive or sexual. She didn't feel attractive sexually. She might have felt attractive about her face, but she didn't feel attractive sexually because it was her legs that were less able, shall we say. So you know, everything in that area was affected in terms of her self-esteem. So yeah. Anyway, I'd had conversations with her about my relationship with Charlie, and Charlie had also been speaking to her about his relationship with me, about our relationship. So something came across from that conversation, like something that Charlie and Sarah had spoken about came back to me through Sarah, in that Charlie wanted to marry me so that he could put a ring on my finger, so that I would always have the ring on my finger, so that he would always know where I was and that he would always know that I was faithful, right? And something else came up as well, which was that Charlie had realized that he was basically trying to have a gay relationship with a straight man, as in me being the straight man, right? So in a way I was quite pleased with that, because I was like, yes, you know, that's exactly how I feel, that I've been straight this whole time, and I've been a straight man trying to force myself to have a relationship with a gay man. So that came out. Other things as well came up, like I had another friend called Tom. He was one of the people in the campaigns forum that I was doing this environmental and social justice warrior type campaigning, but we didn't call it social justice warrior type thing back in those days because it hadn't become stigmatized to be in that position in society at that point, but now it has. Yeah, but Tom had his own crush thing going on with one of the girls in the campaigns forum, called Rhiannon. Why not? Let's just say the names. So he had a crush going on with her, and so strangely Tom and I became quite good friends, both because of the campaigns forum and also because we shared similar views in terms of politics and green politics, environmental type of stuff. And also he was a philosophy student as well, so we would talk about ethics and things. And he would like he was a fourth year, I think, or third or fourth year when I started. So he had this sense of maturity about him that I didn't have. I was this kind of gung-ho mad person, and he had this sense of having done a lot of this philosophy stuff and having done a lot of this living stuff, right? And he seemed to have some sense of emotional maturity about him that I didn't really have. He seemed to have a kind of sense of being centered in a way that I didn't really have. I was more like, we just do anything kind of thing. Tom sat back in himself a little bit, and he also sat back from his mind. I noticed that when you would ask him a question, he wouldn't just kind of blurt out an answer. He would be thinking about the question and like weighing up. He would do this kind of thing where he'd go like left and right in his mind, and he just sort of, it's almost like he was playing a table tennis match in his head between two different points of view and weighing up the yeses and the nos and considering his answer before he gave you an answer. If you'd given him some kind of deep question, I used to always ask people stupid questions based on my beliefs, like, don't you think that we should implement a global referendum type of voting system, Tom? And he would go, Well, the thing about a global referendum voting system is that how would you actually administer that type of thing? And aside from the fact that it may well sound like it's democratic, if you think about the overall structure, some kind of well thought out response, basically. Whereas I'd be going like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, blah, 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 blah. Just say whatever stupid beliefs that had popped into my head without really... It was like, so Tom just sat back from his mind a little bit more. Like he kind of had this intelligence where he could actually listen to his thoughts and reason through his thoughts before actually saying them. But I would just be like really invested in every thought that I was saying. I was very passionate about everything I was doing at all times, and and I was always coming up with new stupid beliefs and new. I call them stupid now, but at the time it was like really important that that I have these beliefs about life and what is important and what we should do in the world and what are the problems and what can we do for the solutions and stuff like that. So it's very much action philosophy, man. Come on, we need to bring these things together and save the world somehow. And Tom was more like kind of could see a balanced viewpoint on things. So we became friends, and we were. I was talking to him about his crush. He already had a girlfriend. I was talking to him about his crush on Rhiannon, and I was trying to help him, psychologically speaking, to understand it and deal with it and to know what to do about it. And so I did some of that. Maybe what I said helped. I don't know. I think he said that something I'd said helped at one point, but I can't remember. But anyway, something came up in a conversation where I believe I had broken up with Charlie, or was thinking of breaking up with Charlie, and Tom said something like he didn't want to say anything, but he could see from the outside that my relationship with Charlie was driving me insane, or was a mad relationship, or was a bad relationship. And I hadn't seen it, and I was a bit disappointed that no one had even bothered to fucking tell me. And just, if it was obvious that the relationship was insane or mad, it would have been nice to have heard that from someone so I could get a bit of feedback and make a more informed decision and see things from a different perspective. But I think I was very much isolated in that relationship. I didn't feel like I was able to talk about my relationship with other people. I felt like the problems that I was having in that relationship, I was not allowed to share, or I wasn't able to share with other people, because I was also trying to maintain this sense of happiness to other people. I wanted to say, and show to the other people the front, if you like. I wanted to put on this front to the world that I was managing and I was okay, and that things were going well. You know, that whole standard social side of being in a relationship where you have to convey to other people that your relationship is going well. There's a sense of pressure, or there was a sense of pressure in me to, instead of deliver the actual truth to people of my feelings and of my concerns and anxieties and the feeling of stress or problems that and arguments that I was having with Charlie, there was a sense that I had to make this front that things were okay, and more importantly, just to not talk about it, to just kind of hide it, or to just give a blanket response of things are good, or things are okay, or things are fine. And I think that other people can resonate with that. You know, if you've been in a relationship before where you feel like when other people ask you about it, you have to be you have to lie, essentially. You just have to say something banal, like, yeah, things are cool, you know, we don't spend as much time with each other as we want to, but it's okay, you know, we work it out or whatever. Whereas what the real truth is something along the lines of, we pretty much hate each other, but we don't know what to do about it. There's a reason, I think, why that happens as well, because for one thing, society does not really have the tolerance at certain levels of intimacy we don't have the tolerance to listen to other people. Like, so if you have to get to a certain level of friendship, I think, with another person to be able to, for the other person to feel like they will listen to you. I know that sounds weird, but like, you know, when you have your heart to hearts, I feel like you have to work your way towards being able to have heart to hearts with people. Nowadays, I will just tell people exactly what is the case when it is the case, in terms of my feelings and in terms of situations as well. Because I spent far too long putting on fronts and hiding myself from people, that it's far too much effort to hide things or to dumb things down. So I just will say whatever it is that I have available to say truthfully about stuff. Doesn't make me a better person, doesn't make my life any much better, but it's just easier. It makes me feel, it helps me to vent more if I just say the closest expression of the truth that I can at any given moment, you know. Let's look at the time on this. I'm feeling knackered. Well, so Charlie and I's relationship was a pile of shite. If I try and think of any good moments, really the only good moments were when he was licking my ass, and I don't mean sexually, but when he when he was overpraising me and narcissistically feeding my ego. Those are the good moments where he thought I was a great musician, and he was encouraging me to do my creative work. Those are the good moments, but that wasn't really to do with how we were relating as people. That was just to do with me and me having a supportive partner in crime. So he did things like helping me with mixing my music and recording my music. He was a sound engineer for a bit, not trained or anything, but I just taught him how to do a couple of bits on the computer program, and he did them for me, and that was helpful, and that was nice of him. And those were the good bits, but that was really more that was just my thing, you know. Our relationship, oh, it was sick. It was sick. If I think about how I was with him, it was sick. Sick. It's just sickly and sick and gross, and all enmeshed and, you know, very passive aggressive. The way we communicate was never clear. It was always in a relationship role. I've seen videos because I found a couple of videos lying around somewhere on my computer of me with Charlie, and I'm just going like, oh, you know, bleh. Oh, we love each other, don't we? Yeah, we love each other. Oh, just makes me want to puke. So And then there's this aspect as well that he was infatuated with me, and I really wasn't infatuated with him at all. So it was really annoying to have this person who was a dreadful sycophant the whole time, and was deeply invested in this romance idea of the relationship. And I wasn't experiencing a romance. I was experiencing an annoying person who I felt guilty to leave and felt trapped to be with, yet I couldn't somehow force my way out of it. Anyway, the end of that relationship came about in various different ways. I was trying to break up with him for quite a while, and he kept kind of rationalizing me out of it, or persuading me out of it. So one of the things I did was I said I wanted to stay at my house here, and have some time to myself. And he was like trying to get me to come back to stay with him, because he was dreadfully afraid of me leaving him at all times, which was probably because I always wanted to leave him. I almost wish he would have just said, okay, fine, just go, if that's what you want to do, just go. I'll be okay without you, I can handle it without you. And then I would have been free a lot longer beforehand. But his neediness was so intense, he just couldn't let me go. He couldn't let me break up with him, and it made it really, really hard for me to actually break up with him, because he kept manipulating me back to go out with him, and I would agree to go back to carry on the relationship with him when I didn't want to, because of it was like some emotional trick he played on me, and I hadn't realised it even, that he'd just been twisting himself into this kind of pleading role and saying that he would change, or things would change, and then, not 5 minutes later, but a few hours later, we'd be right back to having arguments, or me feeling dissatisfied and me feeling really unhappy with the relationship. So standard possessive abusive type of relationship dynamic at that point. So I was trying to leave, and I got so desperate to leave that relationship that I called the Samaritans hotline and spoke to them, because I was freaking out, basically. Like, Charlie kept calling me and messaging me, whatever, to get me to come home, and I was working on some piece of music, and I just did not want to go back to his place. I just wanted time away from the guy, It's stressing me out and making me upset even to think about this. But yeah, I was so distressed about the fact that I was working on this project, and Charlie wanted me to go back to, it wasn't my home, but to go back to his. And I was late, and things were running late because I was doing this song, this piece of music, and I was working on it, and it was taking a long time to load and stuff on the PC, like to process things, whatever, I don't know. And Charlie was hassling me, and I was late, and I was just feeling so guilty, is the right word, guilty and stressed. And Charlie was putting this pressure on, and he kept saying like, oh, it's okay, take as long as you need. And then he'd call up again and be like, where are you? And he'd be like, oh, it's okay, And then he'd call up again or text again, like, how long are you going to be? And it was just so infectious, this neediness. It's almost, I feel like he's clawing at my brain and clawing at my heart and emotions. He's just clawing at them to try and pull me to him all the time. And I was going insane. I was actually going insane. Like, I felt like my brain was going to explode. I've got this work that I'm trying to do, and I've got this idiot boyfriend hassling me, and I don't even want to go back there anymore anyway. And I'm having to like tell him, like, put him off because it's taking longer than I thought it would. And really, I wanted to finish off that piece of work, and it was really important to me to finish that off, because I had it. It was something we were gonna put on the album, whatever. So I was doing that, and yeah, it was driving me insane in that moment. And I called up the Samaritans because I was thinking, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I actually want to kill myself right now because I'm so stressed. I want to throw myself out the window. my mind was in overload, in overdrive. It's just like a million different things and so much pressure and so much pain in my head. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I've got to do something. I can't tell anyone how I feel. I don't feel like I can tell my parents. That wasn't even in the equation. I was just so trapped in my head, so unbelievably stressed. I called the Samaritans and I spoke to someone, and they just basically listened. I said stuff like, I'm going insane. My boyfriend is hassling me, and I don't even know if I want to have a boyfriend. I don't actually know if I'm gay. I feel like I'm suicidal. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going to kill myself. I don't know what's going on. I'm so stressed. Whatever. I can't even remember exactly what I said, but I was going insane. And so I spoke to them on the Samaritans thing, and I don't think they really said anything much, but they just listened and maybe asked me a couple of questions. And that did help, to be fair. But oh god, that's so horrendous. And I think that was one of the times after that I had this moment of quiet, where I broke out of the mind briefly, and I just saw the things in front of me on the desk in this maybe 5 seconds or something, 5-10 seconds, or maybe longer, 20 seconds of just clarity, this seeing of the table. And this is the way I live all the time now. Like, I live in this sense of clarity most of the time. Not all the time, right? Most of the time. Whereas before, what it was is all this blah, crazy shit, and I lived in this tiny little space that's like sort of in the front of my forehead or in front of my eyes or something. That's where I lived. But something kind of opened up. This consciousness opened up, and I saw what was in front of me almost like for the first time, and there was no thinking going on. And that would be what is called a satori, a flash of insight, a moment of insight. It's like this veil of thought parted, and I can even see it. It's a bit like a window. Suddenly a clear window is open up in front of me, and I see the desk, maybe the book that's there or the keyboard or something. I just see things, and I'm just sat there in my room upstairs in the way that it used to be when I had this desk and a computer there and stuff with the recording equipment and everything like that, my amplifier in the corner. But I just saw this just opened up briefly into this pure way of seeing, this pure reality, no thinking going on. Very brief moment, and I was like, oh. This is what was being talked about in the Eckhart Tolle book the whole time, this peaceful way of seeing things, this clear way of seeing things. So I was like, that's what it is. It's very, very quiet. Just seeing stuff. And then it's like the window closed again. And I was back in my head for ages, really, seeing little snippets of stuff. I think that most of us actually go about our lives seeing the world through this tiny little pinprick of a window, and we see about like this much of the world, and our attention is always darting from picture to picture to words, whatever, little funk to funky, we know Major Tom's a junkie. So our attention is always flitting from thing to thing to thing. And then what this enlightenment type of seeing or being is that your perceptions are still, or there's a stillness behind your perceptions. So your attention's no longer darting around all over the place, and you're no longer assessing things and judging things and analysing things and wondering whether things are true or false or right or wrong, or whether to accept information or reject information, stuff like that. You just see things through a wider window on your mind, and you just see things more kind of clearly. It's just there. Here's this. Here's this. I see everything. There's nothing else being added on top of that. Like, I'm not interpreting that. I know what it is. I don't have to call it a mouse. I know it's a mouse. So I know it because I use it and it works. Yeah, so I had one of those moments where I was just, think it was around that time. It might have been a different time. Everything blurs into one at a certain point. You know what I mean? So those were some feelings as to why I wanted to break up with Charlie, because I felt so trapped in that relationship. His possessiveness and obsessiveness and neediness made me feel like I was trapped in a little corner and I couldn't do anything without him having to know about it and without it referring to him in some way. My life referred to his life at all times. We were just connected on everything in a really unhealthy and unhappy way. Right? Other things that came up were me seeing the fact that he'd put up these smiley, happy pictures of us at one of his sister's weddings. The wedding of one of his sisters, right? We went to that and he took some pictures, or some pictures were taken, sorry, of us, and then he put up a load of happy smiley ones in the toilet in our little summer house that we were living in. And I was sitting there reading my Gandhi autobiography, and looking around there. There's pictures of me and Charlie happy and smiling in the toilet room, and I was like, what? For one thing, what? Why are they in this room? Why are they in the toilet? Secondly, what? I'm not happy in this relationship. I really realised then that the outer portrayal of our relationship to the camera and to the social world was way different from how I actually felt in the relationship. Plus, I was doing all this spiritual work in these books of really like getting honest and assessing how things really were based on awareness rather than based on thought. So trying to assess things in a new way, assessing my situation via my intuition and assessing my situation via how I felt, and getting to my truth. I feel like this. I feel this sense of urgency right now because the time on the video is running out, and I feel like I don't want to stop just now. So this is a longer video, because otherwise I'm just going to feel rushed again. So I saw those photographs in the toilet and I just thought, this doesn't make any sense. Our relationship is not what it appears to be, or the way we show our relationship to others and the way we show our relationship to ourselves is not the way it really is, and it's not the way it feels. And more importantly, the way that Charlie sees the relationship and portrays the relationship to himself and to us is a very idealized, rose-tinted view of the relationship, which doesn't take into account the reality of how we feel and the arguments and everything. And it's all very kind of surface level. Like he wants to represent the relationship to himself as being a happy relationship, and me being in the awareness of the relationship's ups and downs, and mainly downs, and being aware of my own feelings, I just saw that as untrue or a very warped perception of the relationship. And that sort of stood for how Charlie was as a person. He would rather make things appear good than they actually be good. He would rather tell people the happy story than actually tell them the true story. And in fact, this is a kind of pattern that seems to happen throughout many of my relationships, which is where there have been a lot of relationships in my life where I encounter people who are in a social mode of relating, based on the ego, based on the mind, and based on appearances. And my journey with those people has been about helping them and myself to realize deeper truths. So with Charlie, after the relationship broke up, he became more honest about himself and how he felt. That a lot of the way he had been acting and speaking and the things he said and whatever had been based upon this urge to keep the relationship going. So he wasn't being honest with me fully. He wasn't being himself fully. He was being a relationship version of himself. And I was starting to break out of that relationship version of myself and starting to find myself authentically And originally, my original self, who am I beyond roles? Who am I in myself before I start playing roles? Before I start saying, I'm Ross Wilson? You know, what is that feeling of being myself before I put my clothes on of Ross Wilson? You know, before I put on any roles, before I'm a musician, before I'm an artist, before I'm in this relationship, who am I? What does that feel like to be myself? How do I know myself without any external reference points? You know, how do I know myself only from an internal reference point like that? So I was coming to those kinds of things. But yeah, this has been something that happens in a lot of relationships, which is where I encounter people who are playing relationship roles. Maybe I play a bit of a relationship role to begin with, and then I start to find out the truth of myself in that relationship, and the other person usually doesn't know what's going on as to why their role-based identity is not being successful anymore, whereas it had been successful in other relationships. So like I'm thinking of a recent partner who had, she had a strong relationship role identity in the relationship and certain rules about what a relationship should look like and how it should go, right? And I was way beyond that way of relating by that point. And I was like, I am just myself, and I will be honest, and it doesn't fit a role. It is just the truth of who I am. If you ask me a question, I'm not going to sugarcoat the answer and give you the relationship answer. You know, I did that before, where I told people what I thought they wanted me to say or what I thought they wanted to hear. I've been through that whole thing. So by the time I got to this one, I was like, I am just myself. You know, whether you like my truth or not, it's the truth, and it's how I feel and how I think and what's available to me, and that is what I have to give. So she was another person who, when the relationship broke up, finally started being herself. So I wish that people could, or that I could just meet someone who already knows themselves beyond roles, who's not pussyfooting around and not trying to gain approval and not trying to maintain relationships and maintain a sense of security or stability, who has that sense of security and stability anyway, and who's not trying to achieve happiness through a relationship. Yeah. When you try and find your fulfillment through someone else, you can't, because they have their own life, their own thoughts and feelings, and those things are incredibly unstable. Thoughts and feelings change all the time. If you're investing in another person as your source of happiness and they're a changeable movement of being, then you're fucked. So don't pin your hopes on another person to make you happy. Just find your own inner self, and that is your source of happiness. Then you can be in a relationship in safety with another person. I mean, emotional safety. You can be yourself and feel safe to be yourself, regardless of whether they're playing relationship roles or not as well. It might be that you can't be with someone who is too strongly invested in themselves in a role type of way, but it might be that because you have more safety in yourself, you have more tolerance for other people, and you allow other people to be themselves in whatever manifestation that takes. I went through this process recently where I was really pissed that I wasn't meeting any authentic people or real people. You know, I was always meeting people who were playing a role of some kind, or who were invested in their minds too strongly and didn't know who they were beyond their roles and beyond their minds. And then I let go of that need to have other people be authentic. So now I stay as myself, and I relate to people on whatever level that they present to me, and I relate to them in that level of truth from where I am at that time. So I don't put a requirement on other people anymore to be anything other than they are. I just allow them to be what they are. And if I can't deal with how they are, then I make that decision for myself, and I change, as in I stop hanging out with that person, or I just let that go. You know, because that's my decision to make, and it's existing within my realm of influence. If it's my feeling that is the problem to me, then I can ask, sometimes asking people to change, or asking people to do something differently, or asking people to not do such and such, or to do more of such and such that would be better. But beyond that, if there's an incompatibility or a real strong difficulty between us that is seeming to be irresolvable, then just let it go. But normally, I don't require anyone to be anything other than they are. If I don't like them, then I just don't hang around with them. Yeah. I don't feel compelled to hang out with people who I don't like anymore, either. Whereas I might have felt compelled at certain points, so that I felt like I had friends, or I had some kind of connection to people. Anyway, I was talking more about Charlie and why we broke up. So there are other things as well. So the arguments that we were having, I guess I just realised how many arguments there were. And I realised that my initial assessment of the situation, that it was more healthy than the relationship with Andrea, was incorrect. And in fact, I even found a little post-it note that I left for my family, because I communicated with my family via post-it notes during a period of time while I was working at the Outback. Because I would come home late. I was always working unsociable hours, so I would get up while people were at work and I'd come back while they were asleep, which in a way was good for me because I didn't really want to be spending that much time with my family anymore. I did want to try and fly the nest. But they weren't happy with it because they didn't get to see me and they felt like they were losing me in a way. Anyway, I left them a little post-it note, which I've subsequently ripped up, but I found it the other day, a few days ago, and it said something like, I'm in a relationship with this person and it's good because it's a much happier and healthier relationship than Andrea, so that's good. Which in a way actually was already a kind of trying to convince myself that I should stay in it. Whereas the real truth underneath that was that I'm not enjoying it. I can remember thinking those thoughts of, oh, well, at least it's a better relationship than with me and Andrea. But it wasn't even better than me and Andrea. It was worse. But I was rationalizing. I was trying to convince myself that it was better because I needed something to justify why I was in this relationship when it was shit. And the reason I gave myself was, oh, it's better than it was with Andrea. But the truth was, the reason I was even thinking those thoughts is because I was unhappy. And I was trying to convince myself to stay in the relationship even though I was unhappy, because at least it was something. At least it was better than being with Andrea. But it wasn't better than being with Andrea. It was worse than being with Andrea. But somehow I was just trying to convince myself that it was good, even when the feeling underneath that was, I'm in suffering, I'm in pain. It's like I was trying to push away the pain somehow, because at least I had something. At least I was with someone. At least I wasn't majorly depressed because I don't have anyone and I'm desperate and no one's taking my advances. At least I have someone. At least I'm in a relationship. And that protects me from the worst feelings. And so I was reasoning to myself, oh, well, it's better than being with Andrea. It wasn't better than being with Andrea. Andrea was a walk in the park compared to what I was like with Charlie and what things were like with Charlie. So, yeah. Other things. So the arguments, I started to realise that there were a lot of arguments. As I said before, the input from different friends helped me to realise that things were shit between Charlie and I. I mean, it's like, how could I not have known? How do you not see these things? How do you not see that you're in pain? And how do you not relate the cause of that pain to the relationship when it is obviously that relationship? I mean, I see it now as it was the relationship, but it's like I was so damn confused. I couldn't even pinpoint where this pain was coming from because I was so in my own head and had so many thoughts about it and so many feelings about it and not really know how to make sense of them. I mean, I remember having this journal I used to get these green and blue and black journals from this company called Rhino. Yeah, Rhino. And they would, I think they did recycled paper or something, whatever. But these were cool little journals that I used to have, right? This was while I was at uni, by the way. And I was having these difficulties with the fact that I was with Charlie. I didn't want to be with him, but I just did not know how to break up with him. I didn't even feel like I could consider breaking up with him. Like I wasn't allowed to even consider the option of breaking up with him because it was not allowed somehow. And it just created this massive pain and pressure in my head to think about the possibility of breaking up with him. Because I would meet up with this idea of how much pain it would cause him to break up with him, and I wasn't able to face that pain. But I had this journal, it was a green one, and I did this exercise of writing down my anxieties and my worries, because I had a lot of anxiety at that time in my life. They would come and go, but actually it felt like there was some of it there virtually all the time, this little feeling of anxiety, and then it would get really big, and then my thoughts would start going crazy about it as well. And it was centered around being with Charlie and fancying women. So I had this girl who I was a good friend with. Her name was Kaylee, and I really fancied her, like really, really, really fancied her. I found her really beautiful. She had massive boobs as well. She smelled nice. She was pretty. She was into the same things that I was, and she was like a real contrast to Charlie. And she was sweet as well, and she was honest, and she was caring. She was genuine. And her and I immediately clicked. Like as soon as I got to uni, I remember meeting her and just clicking with her. It was like we'd already known each other for ages. I remember standing in the university students' union club thing, but not while clubbing or anything. It was just in the daytime, and I don't know why we were there actually, but it was for something like the Rock Society or something. I don't know. And I met her there, and I just felt like I felt like I knew her already. I felt like, yeah, that's the best way to say it. I felt like, you have to go through a certain period of time to get to know someone that you like in your friendships. You have this introduction time, and you have a few experiences together, whatever, and you're doing stuff, whether it's in a school setting or a work setting or some other club setting or however you meet someone. But with Kaylee, I have this sensation in my memory, and just how it was it just like went, oh, there you are. Almost like you're the one. Like, I know you. There you are. Oh, I remember you, even though I didn't remember her actively from this life. But yeah, it was like, there you are. Oh, we're the same. There's a sense of recognition of having already known her, already being on the same page. It's like we'd skipped past about 50 conversations to get to a conversation where we were already on the same wavelength. That's what I mean. Like you might have to go through like loads of different arguments with certain people to get to this type of understanding, and it just arrived straight away with this person. I was like, oh, I could really be myself with Kaylee. With the other people, I was always putting on an act, but with Kaylee, I was being myself. I was. She was amazing. She was beautiful. She was caring. She was herself. She was authentic. She swore a fucking load as well. She used to say cunt a lot. Yeah. And there was a sense of peace in our relationship, our friendship. For me, it was also a relationship. I remember lying on her bed with her, just next to her and cuddling her. That only ever happened once or maybe twice, but it was a really beautiful experience. We just laid there. We didn't say anything. We didn't kiss. We just hugged and just lay there. No sex, no nothing. So I had this boyfriend, right? That was amazing. It just felt very warm and cozy. But after that, she always had boyfriends, so we could never get anything together. Plus, I went insane and ended up in a mental health institution. She was one of the people who I was talking to while I was in the mental health hospital, actually, because I got back in contact with her. She was okay for a while as a friend, but I don't think she probably couldn't handle me being insane, to be honest. It was very difficult for other people to talk to me during that time without them judging me and stuff. But yeah, her and I, in the beginning, couple of years, we had a really good relationship. It was a friendship, but I think relationship is an appropriate word because we were quite intimate in how we were with each other. And she wouldn't bullshit me. She wouldn't, she would never bullshit me. She was very aware and very bright and very herself. Yeah, I miss that person. But I want to go back to describing our first meeting, because it's almost like I didn't even recognise how amazing that was. That was really something else. I remember just being in a line of some kind. We were in a line. I don't know why. What we were waiting for, something. Maybe we were waiting for something, or I don't know. And just showed up next to her, spoke to her, and I just felt instantly like, yes, we know each other. We already know each other. We are coming from the same place. I know you. I've always known you. I knew you already. I've known you before. I recognize you. You're the same as me. I remember you, even though I hadn't met her in this lifetime. And also something like, you're the one. You are myself, or you're easy to be with. You are the same as me. I know you. I already know you. I feel instant rapport with you. I'm already connected to you. I already was connected to you before I met you. I already knew you before I met you. Like that. Sort of like, not even down to the nitty gritty of personality and stuff like that, or sense of humour. I mean, those things were the same, but it was more like who she was, where she was coming from. That was the same. The beingness was the same. So I remember I used to go back to her room after lectures and just hang out with her for a few minutes to an hour. You know, I was just sitting in her chair reading a book on Marxism or something, communism, talking to her. And the reason I'd gone there was just to be with her, not to read the stupid book. And I was in love with her. I cared about her. I really cared about her. She was upset about being at uni because all of her friends were back at home, so she was constantly on MSN Messenger at that time. And I was trying to get her to invest in being where she was, because she's only making herself unhappy by harking back to where she isn't at the moment, and to make new friends here and to be here, because she was thinking of quitting quite earlier on, and I didn't want her to quit because I loved her. Oh my god, I'm actually saying that. I loved her. I was in love with her. Probably still am in some way. If I met her again, I probably would feel that same feeling. Maybe I should look her up. I always think about looking her up, but I feel like I've gone way beyond being able to look her up anymore. I should try again. Maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend anymore. She's always had a boyfriend. It's been really annoying. Yeah, so I was in love with her, and I used to go and spend time with her and just relax and be myself and stuff. And it was like she could see through my silly role playing of being the one that talked to everyone. she used to say, "Oh, everybody loves Ross Wilson," and I was like, "Oh, they love me because I'm loving and because I talk to them, and they don't really love me anyway. It's just that I'm going around to talk to loads of people." But yeah, her and I had a good little relationship. And that was in stark contrast to my horrible relationship with Charlie. But it's like I feel like I want to kick myself and like shout at my earlier self and say, look, Charlie is a bad person for you. He might even be a bad person in general. But I just want to sit myself down and say, look, you are not happy with your relationship with Charlie. You need to end it tonight. Forget about his number, delete his number from your phone, never go and see him ever again, and just deal with it and cry and forget about him. And just say to your parents and whoever asks, I broke up with him because it wasn't working. And also, I realised I'm not actually gay either. And you can carry on your uni and you can finish your uni course, because if you carry on doing this uni course while you're with this Charlie person, you're going to quit eventually, because I have seen the future, because I am your future self, and you're going to quit because Charlie is going to drive you insane, and you need to break up with him now, because if you don't, you are going to quit your uni, and actually worse, you're going to end up in a mental health hospital in the future, because he actually will drive you insane. It's not even just me saying insane. You actually are. I am coming from the future to tell you that you are going to end up in a mental health institution because of this relationship. So you need to quit it now. And you should go out with Kaylee or go out with any other girl who's in your area. You're not gay. You never were gay. It was only an experiment that you were trying. It didn't work out. You should listen to yourself. Listen to your feelings. Your feelings now are telling you already that it's driving you insane. Your feelings now are telling you that you're trapped. You need to break free. You need to get out of the relationship. The relationship is the problem. The relationship is the problem. Charlie is the problem. You don't have to second guess it. You are correct. It is Charlie. It is your relationship with Charlie that's driving you insane. You need to leave him. Leave him now. Yeah. Because if I'd listened to that, I could have saved myself a hell of a lot of grief. And maybe I would have been in a better position by now. I wish I'd gone out with Kaylee. I'd wish I'd broken up with Charlie. There were so many girls I fancied in that art class. It seems like about 3% of the people who do art are men, and the rest are women. 97% women and 3% men. Alright, it's less than that. There were more men than that. It was like 20% men, 80% women. There's loads of women, basically. Loads and loads of women did art. So, yeah. So another thing that came up, that when I finally actually did start realizing the truth of the situation, I mean, how can I? It's like, how can I even fucking? How could I not see it? But it's also, but I think the reason I couldn't see it is because my head was so jam packed full of it. I was so close to it, and I didn't get any space. While I was at uni, my schedule was so crammed. I crammed it, by the way, because those are the things that I wanted to do, that I didn't have the space to really think about my relationship with Charlie for any length of time without it driving me insane. So, and then when I came back from uni, I was with him all the time, so I didn't have a chance to actually consider it from an outside perspective or get any kind of distance from it, get some space from it to understand what was going on and think about it. It's just too caught up in doing the things I was doing and not realizing how much this relationship was affecting me and how painful it was and how unhappy it was making me. Yeah, so the picture thing in the toilets, the feedback from friends, the fact that I did fancy these women was starting to make me want to leave the relationship as well, because that was a serious concern of mine. Like, as in, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't make sense of how I could be thinking about all these women all the time, fancying the pants off them and wanting to get with them and stuff, and wanting to go and spend time with them and talk to them, and virtually trying to start relationships with women, but never being able to actually start relationships with women. So I was like doing all this flirting kind of, but because I had this gay identity persona beside it or around it, it meant that I could get in on girl talks and spend time with girls because of the gay card. drop me gay card. That was a thing when I was at school, primary school. You drop me gay card, mate. Yeah, but I had the gay card by the time I was in. I had the gay card by the time I was at uni. I had the gay card, which allowed me into special areas, special rooms, women only rooms, because I was gay, so therefore I was not a threat. Yeah. But so I was like virtually trying to get with women, but never actually really getting with women or trying to get with women because of this massive gay persona and this gay barrier. It was a barrier that I had erected. Good words. It was a barrier that I had erected. Okay, I can't say that. It was a barrier that I had erected. What am I saying? What are these words? And why is the fucking shredder always on? Right, let's turn it off. Oh god. So I was trying to get with women basically, and then realizing afterwards, oh my god, I've got a boyfriend. How does this make any sense? I'm cheating basically. I'm cheating in my mind. I'm cheating in my emotions, and I can't help it either because I'm just attracted to these women. So, that drove me insane as well and gave me massive anxiety. And that was one of the things I was writing in that journal, in that green journal, about the fact that I have these feelings for Kaylee. And I've got this Charlie person on the line, on the end of the line, on the fucking phone line, always trying to call me, and he always wants to wank together. So I did it to please him, not because I wanted to do it, but because he wanted to do it. And I did so much because he wanted me to do it, and not because I wanted to do it myself. Oh, God. And fast forwarding that relationship, I remember, so we went to Bath. We went on this little holiday, and he started manipulating me about the money aspect because I didn't have very much money at that time. I was in the holidays from uni, and I was only doing bits and bobs of work here and there, so I didn't have a stable job like he did. He worked at the Outback for a while after I quit, and then he got a different job. He got a job at the Marriott Hotel in Langley, which is nearby me. Fuck. Right. And so we went to Bath. Again, I didn't really enjoy it, but he did, and I was always having to try and make up the fact that I was enjoying it when I wasn't really enjoying it at all, and I had this feeling of pain in my head the whole fucking time, and not wanting to be there all the time, and not wanting to be touching him, and not wanting to be holding hands with him, and not wanting to cuddle him, and not wanting to have sex with him, and just feeling like cringy a lot of the time, and creeped out a lot of the time, but not being able to express that because it was not part of the relationship role to be that honest. And then he started manipulating me about the money aspect, saying that I should pay him back, but I didn't have to worry about it. And then he'd bring it up later and use it as some manipulation tool somehow to make me feel guilty the fact that I hadn't paid it, but then he wouldn't
ask for it back. Either he just kind of wanted it as a tool, I think. If I think about it now, he didn't actually really want me to pay it back, because if he kept it there as being not paid back, then he could use it as a manipulation tool of some kind. Just to sort of use it as a dig to have a go at me. So I don't think he actually wanted me to pay it back. He wanted it to be a debt so that I could be controlled by it or manipulated by it, right? So he would. That's why he would use the double bind, the two conflicting points of view. Whether he did it consciously or not, I'm not sure. But he would, for the one hand, say, "Oh, it's fine. You know, you don't have to pay me back. Pay me back whenever," sort of thing. And then on the other hand, he'd go, "You haven't paid me back that money. You know, you still owe me £400." So, or he would use it somehow in a like offhand kind of way regarding money. When I was doing something about my own finances, he would then bring in the fact that I owed him the £400. So, it was messed up. It was messed up. God damn it, my life was fucked. Right. I don't know if that played into one of the reasons why I wanted to leave him, but I started realizing that he was manipulative and persuasive. The word I used was persuasive. So I was trying to leave him, and that sounds weird. Why don't you just leave him instead of trying to leave him? Well, the thing was, it was like it was a negotiation process, because I had to negotiate with myself my own ability to break up with him. I was not good at breaking up with people. Like, Andrew had broken up with me, Vicky had broken up with me, the girl beforehand. The only person, and Sarah, my first girlfriend, had broken up with me as well. The only person I had ever broken up with was a girl who wasn't really my girlfriend. We were kind of dating for a bit, but it didn't feel like there was that much commitment, so it was easier to break up with her. And also, she just really pissed me off, and I knew for a fact with that person that it wasn't working. Whereas with other people, it's been less clear. And with Charlie, things were so unclear and so murky that because I was suppressed by the relationship, the rules of the relationship did not allow for genuine honesty. And the rules of the relationship were claustrophobic, so that I wasn't allowed time to have my own perceptions, to have my own responses, to have my own thinking time to decide whether this was actually what I wanted or not. Now, I think that if you're in a relationship, there should be, part of the thing is you're there by choice, and therefore you have to be able to have the freedom to decide if that is what you are choosing to do, or if it's not, or if there needs to be a kind of openness for people to be able to say, "I want to leave." I think that there should always be the option of breaking up. It should be allowed. It should be a consideration. We can break up. We are allowed to break up. We don't have to do this. There should be a kind of clause that this is a relationship, but it's not set in stone forevermore. Even if you're married, I want there to be the clause, just an emotional understanding that, okay, we are allowed to divorce. It's legal to divorce, but also emotionally, we are allowed to split up if this isn't working for us. And if it's not working for you, I allow you to break up with me in the future. I don't want you to have to worry about whether you are allowed to break up with me. Of course you're allowed to break up with me. I'm not going to resist you if that's what you want to do. If that is what you decide to do, I am not going to put up a fight. If you want to leave me, you can leave me. Because I think it's only under that kind of condition or that atmosphere that you can choose to freely be in a relationship. Because if there's an understanding that once you're in a relationship, that's a closed system, then you're not free within that relationship. You have to feel as though, this is just my perspective after going through loads of shitty relationships. I feel like it's almost like a friendship. You have the option to say yes to it or the option to say no to it at any time. because that is your right as an individual human being. And it's only with that understanding of being a free, expansive, open situation, it's only when you have that atmosphere of freedom that you can choose genuinely to say yes to it in the first place. Because if you're saying yes to it based on some rules or based on some emotional addiction feeling that you have to be in it, then you're not choosing from yourself. You're choosing from a compulsive place. You're not even making a choice. It's just kind of happening. So you're not deciding, I want to be here. I vote to be here. I am asking that of myself. I want to be here. I choose to be here. And you can't choose to be somewhere if there's not an option. You have to have the option to not be there. You have to have the openness of a yes and a no. So you have to be able to kind of say, I choose to be here, and the only reason that has any meaning is if it's possible for you to choose to not be there. Whereas with Charlie, the atmosphere in that relationship was one of no choice to leave. There was no option. Somehow it was built into the terms of the relationship that there was no option of considering leaving. So for me, that was really hard. I had to fight my way through layers of turmoil, basically, to be able to get to the point where I even considered that it was an option to leave, that I could even see my own feelings clearly enough to be able to act upon them. That was hard. Yeah. And I hope that this resonates with someone, because I want you to feel free to leave your relationship. If you're in a situation where you feel you're not free, I want to tell you, for one thing, you actually are free to go and free to stay. That's the way I like to think of it. You're free to go and you're free to stay. It's up to you. And you should always remember, at any time, in any situation, you are free to go and you're free to stay. Apart from some difficult situations like prison, where you're not free to go. Yeah. But that's what this relationship felt like. It felt like a prison. And I remember having an argument with him. It might be only one argument or two separate arguments, I'm not sure. But I remember I was doing some work with my gran around the corner. I think we were doing some pavement slabs, to put some pavement slabs up the top of our garden or something. Repavementing that area. Something like that. Pardon me. And again, Charlie was hassling me as to when I was going to finish, or he came round to see me and pick me up or something, whatever. And he was always doing that. He always had to kind of be with me and come to me. It was not like I was allowed to have my own fucking life. He was always constantly showing up when I was busking, I think he was kind of showing up because he was scared that I would leave him or find someone more attractive than him on the street. Which, fine. I would have been better off if I had. But he would sort of sugarcoat that, I think, by saying that he just wanted to see me perform or something. But no, it was there to try and make sure that I wasn't straying. That's what it was. So I was doing this work with my grans, paving something at the end of the garden, whatever. And Charlie and I were having this argument over the phone. Just some little thing had pissed him off or pissed me off, and we were arguing over the phone. And I think I just said something, oh, fucking hell, fuck off, or let's just forget about it, or something like that. Well, that's it, or I'm done, or something like that. And that was another little attempt, I think, to break up, but it didn't quite go all the way to actual breakups, because somehow he persuaded me that things were going to change again. So every time I would say that I wanted to leave or I wanted to break up, it was like I never had the ability at that point in time to just decide something, say, I'm breaking up with you, it's over. That's the end. Because that's a decision that I have made with regard to what I am going to do. and I'm not asking for your approval. I'm not asking for it to be mutual. This is something I am going to do. I am breaking up with you. Like, this is the end because I say it's the end for me. Because I am not going to come round and see you anymore. And I am not going to call you anymore. Because I have decided that this is the end for me. And there's no like point in arguing with it because I've already made the decision. Okay. Now for me, that's quite a deep place to get to. I have to really work to get to that kind of place. And if I had that ability, that would have been good. I did have it at a certain other point with another girlfriend where I absolutely knew that was the end. And even though she freaked out, there was no way that was happening again. We slept together, I think, once afterwards, which was a little. And then, no, we didn't. Sorry, not even. No, the final time we did not. We didn't do anything. I broke up with her briefly at one point, but when the actual breakup came, it was because I had made an actual internal decision. It wasn't like, sometimes you might break up with people because you're unsure whether you should be with them or not. And you're not really committed to that as a decision. But when I broke up with her, her name was Gemma, I knew that I was breaking up with her. And it was my decision. It was a decision that I had come to through thinking about my feelings and thinking about what I wanted and stuff in my life and whatever. So if I'd had that ability with Charlie to just say, hey, I'm really sorry. I've been doing some thinking about our relationship and it's not really working out for me. In fact, it's not working out for me at all, and it hasn't been working out for me for a while. I appreciate the time we spent together. You're a good guy. I just don't feel like we're the right people for each other. And there's nothing you can do about that because it's my feeling, and I have decided that I don't want to be in this anymore, and I'm breaking up with you, and this is the end from my perspective. So I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I'm gonna. This is going to be the last conversation we have, or depending on the situation, I'm going to come around and collect my stuff. We can say our goodbyes properly then, but I just wanted to let you know that this is the end, and I'm not coming back. And there's nothing you can do, I'm afraid. There's no persuasion or convincing or changing that you can do because I've already made the decision. It's not a decision that is, if you do this, then I'll stay. I've decided. So yeah, I wish I had that ability at that time because I didn't have that sort of strength of mind. It's not even of mind, it's just knowing what is right for you, what is right for oneself. Yeah, I didn't know what was right because I was all blah, 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 in my head all the time and trying to make sense of it all. And if I'd had longer away from the damn guy, I'd have been able to figure shit out. I think that is why space in a relationship is really important, to have time away from people to actually think about. You need to see things from a bird's eye point of view. You need to kind of get away from someone to see the relationship clearly, because while you're constantly in it, it's like you're not able to make sense of your thinking and your perceptions because you're involved all the time. The person is always there, so there's like this pressure somewhat to maintain the relationship or to maintain an image of it or whatever, and you don't have time to actually really look at the relationship as a whole from your own perspective, because oftentimes if you're having an appraisal type of thing, if you're like you're having a discussion about your relationship with your partner, your relationship discussion is both of you talking about the relationship, but I think you need to be able to have your own time to see your relationship from your own perspective, not from the couple's perspective. Because the couple has its own perspective usually in a relationship. It's kind of a conjoined perspective on the relationship, of the us perspective or the we perspective. We, no. Yeah, but you have to kind of separate yourself out from that and have your own perspective of the relationship, and the way I see it nowadays is like you need to be able to look at it from afar without the pressure of that other person's response. So you kind of separate out from what they might think or feel. You have to look into yourself and say, is this working for me? And in a way, that's great. If you can go away, have that perspective, look at the relationship and say, yeah, it is working for me. It's fine. Yes, there are some problems, or yes, there are some like areas of disgruntlement or not so happy areas. But overall, looking at it from this far off perspective, I actually like it. On the whole, our relationship is good. You know, if you can get to that kind of place, then that proves in a way that the relationship is good. Because if you think it's good while you're in it and whatever, but you might be sort of deluding yourself somewhat. You might be basing things off feelings that maybe there's other feelings that you haven't been able to see or feel because you're too involved in the day-to-day stuff. So if you can get away from your relationship and look at it and still come back and say, this is where I want to be, this is who I want to be with, you are who I want to be with, then that's good. Because oftentimes what happens in relationships is you get any period of break from people and you realize, oh my God, why am I with this person? And it's only because you haven't had the time spent apart from them to evaluate things. And as soon as you like take any space away from them, you realize, oh God, why am I with them? And that realization was always available to you if you had just taken a week off or something from the relationship. Now, as I say, if you can get into a relationship where you take a week off and you go, oh yeah, I still want to be with them. They're the person who I'm supposed to be with. I want to be with them. Then that's the one, isn't it? That's the one to be with. But if you have the space and you realize, oh God, then, you know, that's what it was. I know what I'm saying. Space in relationships is helpful because it helps you to realize the true nature of your relationship. If you can still be happy with the person who you are with after not speaking to them for a week and just having your own time to think about things and feel things through, and then go back to it and you're like, yeah, I just needed a bit of time apart. And maybe they're going, oh my God, he's going to leave me. But I'll be like, no, I just needed a time apart. Look, it's either to have time apart or break up with you. So, because I need that time. Yeah, so Charlie and I had this another argument with at my grand's house, and I think maybe that the fact I was at my grand's house had something to do with it because I was upset that Charlie had brought that kind of drama into my life while I was at my nan's house while I was doing this work, you know. So I think that was another aspect of it, like his nonsense was just following me everywhere. And I just realized at that point, I was like, this person is insane. And this relationship is insane. This is mad. This is actually mad. Like, I cannot do anything without you being around and worried about me or concerned about the relationship and worried whether I'm coming back or whatever the fuck it was, you know? And then a final one, I think it was this one that was the final one. I remember having another conversation with him on the phone while I was coming back from busking. Just got in my car and I was speaking to him. And he said something like, I am really selfish. He said that I was selfish. And I was like, well, if you think I'm selfish, then I don't think you know me at all. Because selfish is not a word I would describe to myself from the way I behave with everyone else in my life. And so when he said that, it just clashed so much with my understanding of myself that I was like, that's it. You called me selfish. You don't know me. Or the other angle was, maybe I'm not showing up to him the way I show up to other people. But whatever the case, there's something seriously disconnected between how you see things and how I see things. How you think about things and how I think about things. So he called me selfish, and I think that was the real point where I was like, you don't know me at all. You don't see me how I see myself. You don't see me how other people see me. You see me through some kind of weird, warped lens. And I can't be with you anymore if you can't see me clearly. It's not that I wanted him to think I was this amazing person. It was just that he was seeing me in such negative terms that I just couldn't be with him anymore. And I think it was after that that I came home to his house, and I just cried and cried and cried. I cried for what feels like 4 hours or a whole day. I just cried and cried and cried. It was like really deep crying. Not like couldn't stop it. Worse than it wasn't sobs. It wasn't little moans or whimpering. It was just full body crying. I cried for. It just felt like half a day, at least half a day, because when it was finished, there was more, and I just cried and cried and cried, and I was raw. My throat was raw afterwards, and to drink water to keep myself in, to be able to cry. I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried all afternoon and evening, and I don't know if he was there or not. I feel like he might have been there for a bit, but he couldn't stop me. I just cried and cried and cried. I don't even know why. I just cried. Probably because it was the end, and maybe because I was suddenly free of all this stress, and there was just a massive release. I just cried for hours and hours and hours. Maybe it was only like 3 minutes, but it was so long and so deep, like proper gut level crying. My whole gut was crying, my whole chest was crying. I was crying out of my face. Loudest crying I've ever cried in my whole life, and so painful. So much tears, so much wailing. I was just on and on and on. And when it had finished for a bit and I was just sobbing, then it'd just get more. And I was just on this bed the whole time, just crying and crying and crying and crying. And then I'd think of some other image or some idea would come to me, and I'd just cry and cry and cry again and again, over and over. And it just lasted for ages, just crying and crying. And then, like, something else comes to me, and just cried and cried and cried. Eventually, obviously, it stopped, but I mean, I'd also been crying in our sex as well. And now, I think, looking back at it, the reason I was crying was because I just didn't want to be doing it. And I felt like I was forcing myself through it. And that's why I was crying. It was crying because it felt abusive. It was hurting me to do that. So yeah, I just cried and cried and cried. Probably because I'd put so much investment into the nature of the relationship. I'd created a whole identity for myself around it. I created this whole gay persona around this relationship, and it turned out to be false. It turned out to be wrong. It turned out to be inaccurate, incorrect, wrong. And I just cried. And I also think I was crying because I'd basically ruined my life around that relationship. By the time I ended the relationship, I'd quit uni, because the relationship was dragging me down. I mean, Charlie wanted me to stay at home with him in Raysbury rather than moving in with the girls from the campaigns forum, and the other, it was mainly girls and one guy, in a house that I wanted to live. I wanted to live with those guys. And Charlie somehow convinced me to not do that because he wanted me to stay with him. And I acquiesced, if that's the right word, just surrendered and just said, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I realised that he'd been slowly and subtly manipulating me to basically come and stay with him and live with him and not continue going to uni. And this is going to be quite difficult to describe how that actually happened. But I kept suggesting ideas about what I wanted to do else. And he kind of kept, he would encourage my ideas that were away from uni, and he would encourage ideas that brought me closer to him. And then he would put blocks on things that were far away. I think I must have started losing my own fucking mind at a certain point, to not be able to see this kind of thing. But I noticed that afterwards, when I did some thinking about how did that relationship go down in flames, and yeah, I just remember looking through how those conversations went and realised that he was subtly manipulating me to move back to be with him the whole time. He was always trying to get me to stop doing things that took me away from him and to bring me so that he could have me in his little keep, basically, the whole time. And an incredibly disempowering relationship by the end of it for me. So I'd acquiesced and said that I would stay at home at Raisbury with him in the summer house, and commute to Reading University to do my studies, which meant that I couldn't really do all the campaigning that I wanted to do anymore, and I had to cut down my activities and stuff a hell of a lot because I just had to do this bike ride from Reading University to Early train station. When I got off at Early train station with my bike, which I had to lift over 2 sets of bridge stairs, by the way, which was heavy and long and annoying and difficult. Plus, I was a vegan, so I wasn't exactly full of protein. Yeah, I was ill in the sense of malnourished. I'm painting a really dodgy picture. I wasn't that ill, okay? I wasn't properly ill. I was stress ill, and I was weak. I wasn't weak. I was thin. Sorry, I was thin. I was emaciated. Okay, I was emaciated because I was a vegan and I wasn't really eating enough protein. Okay, I was really skinny, and I had to lift this bike over this set of train stairs, whatever. Right, so the journey was go from Raisbury, ride my bike to Egham, take the bike on the train in the early morning at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. I had to wake up at 7, get on the train at around 8. Yeah, so rush in the morning, ride my bike. Why do I have to ride my bike? Why didn't I just get in the car? I had a car still at that point. Don't know. Maybe it was cheaper or something. Why was I not using my car? Bizarre. Why wasn't I using my car? Bizarre. Yeah, and take my bike over the fucking steps. Take my bike onto the train. Have to deal with the bike being on the train. Take the bike off the train, over a load of steps, ride another 10 minutes or so to the actual campus, have a full day of lectures and work and whatever other activities I was doing, right? I felt separated from all my friends because I didn't go back to stay with the people who I was on my course with and who were my friends. So I felt increasingly isolated in the second year. And then come home after having spent all my time feeling isolated and like the wind was going out of my sails. Ride my bike to the train station at Early, take it over the fucking stairs, put the bike on the fucking train, get off the train at Egham, take the bike over the fucking stairs, and then ride back in the pitch dark with a crappy little light on my bike. Get back, have an argument with Charlie, listen to him chatting about his terrible work day, and then go to bed feeling absolutely exhausted and waking up absolutely exhausted the next day to do it all again. Whereas if I'd actually stuck to my guns on various things, like staying in the student house in the second year as I wanted to, if I'd stuck to my guns on that, then I would have been on campus. It would have been easy to get to the campus and do my lectures. I would have been part of the community, but living at home and commuting every day just made me feel so disconnected from everything. When I was living on campus in the first year, I felt like I was a part of everything. I was a part of my friend groups. I was a part of the campaigns forum. I was a part of the uni. I just felt like I was at home. I was where I was supposed to be. And then going back to Charlie's house every night just felt so draining and scary as well, because it was at night, in a particularly dangerous part of the road. Cars whooshing past me, with just my little lights flashing on my bike, feeling like I was about to be run over any fucking minute. And I was reading that Deepak Chopra book, The Book of Secrets, and he was talking about removing stress from your life. And he said, stop doing one or two things, or make a list of the things you do and pick the most stressful ones and stop doing them. And I realised that the commute to work was stressing me out and I needed to stop it. So that's why I quit uni, because I was burnt out, stressed, isolated, depressed, disconnected from my friends, having a horrible relationship. Basically, I guess you'd call it a breakdown, nervous breakdown, I was empty. Plus, I had recorded this album over the summer, before going back to uni, and I did feel like there was promise in that, and I wanted to make that work for me somehow, and I was trying to make that work. But yeah, that's why I quit uni. And that was the beginning of my life going really off the rails. So I remember going back to Charlie's and picking bits and bobs up that I had over in the studio. His dad had this studio that I mentioned, graphics design studio, because he ran a graphics design company as well as being a property owner. And picked up my stuff and said my last goodbyes to Charlie. He went off on some holiday to New Zealand for a week or two to get away from it all and have a change of scene, because everything was reminding him of our relationship, and he was going nuts about it, so he had to get away. Fair play to him, but I didn't have that luxury because I didn't have the money to go off to New Zealand, but he did. We met up when he came back and just exchanged a kind of few little insights about things, and apologised to each other and wished each other well, and that was it. So that relationship destroyed my life. my whole life, like before it, by the end of the relationship, had all changed and it had all gone shit. No uni, no friends, no emotional reserves anymore, no relationship because it was ended. Just all I had was my spirituality and that whole path, my music, my artwork, whatever. So I think that it wasn't the smoking weed when I was younger that caused my psychosis. It was the stress and turmoil of being in the relationship with Charlie that broke my mind open because I no longer had any mind left, no longer had any emotion left. So I just went bang, like I'm snapped open. Again, we say psychosis like it's a bad thing. Psychosis was actually quite a good experience for me overall. But those that kind of loss of my normal life is still pretty shit. So that seems like a good place to end it. 2 hours and 11. Yeah. And then I suppose we should cover again in detail what happened after I left Charlie. Okay.